when a bunch of rowdy boys ran in. They laughed and jeered at Dumbo, then pulled his ears. Mrs. Jumbo wanted to protect her baby, so she picked up a bale of straw and threw it at the boys to scare them away. "Help, mad elephant," they screamed. The trainers quickly came, dragged Mrs. Jumbo away, and locked her up on her own, with chains tied to each of her 4 legs. Dumbo, crying for his mother, thought he had no friends in the world. But someone did want to be his friend, a little mouse named Timothy. When Timothy saw how the other elephants treated Dumbo, it made him mad. "Look at that poor little fella," he said. "Everyone's making fun of his ears. What's the matter with them? I think they're cute." The mouse went up to Dumbo. "I'm Timothy Mouse, and I'm your friend, Dumbo. I have a plan to help you free your mother. All we gotta do is make you a big star. But first, we need a really colossal act. And I'm just the fellow to think of one. Leave everything to me." At that, Dumbo forgot all about being scared. The next day, Timothy had put his plan to make Dumbo a star into action. The ringmaster blew his whistle, and Dumbo and Timothy watched as the elephant pyramid rose higher and higher until it almost reached the top of the tent. It was soon Dumbo's turn. All he had to do was reach the very top of the pyramid. But before Dumbo could make his leap, his ears became untied and he stumbled over them, right into the elephant pyramid. The elephants began to fall. Trumpeting and bellowing, they tumbled down, crashing into beams, platforms, and bleachers. They smacked into walls and pulled down wires and ropes. Finally, they crashed into the center tent pole. With a huge groan, the tent collapsed. Dumbo was left sitting alone and sad in the middle of the ruins. The very next show, the clowns painted Dumbo's face and dressed him as a baby. They put him on a tiny platform high up in a building surrounded by crackling fake flames. Dumbo stood, shaking with fear, while far below, clowns dressed as firemen ran around squirting hoses at each other. The fireman held up a thin safety net and, closing his eyes, Dumbo jumped. Dumbo fell through the net and landed in a tub of wet plaster. The audience roared with laughter. As the clowns bowed to the cheering crowds, they paid no attention to Dumbo, who crept from the tent, feeling hurt, humiliated, and miserable. After the show, the clowns celebrated in their tent. "Cheer up, Dumbo," Timothy said, as he scrubbed his friend's sad little face. "I found out where they're keeping your mother. I'm going to take you to see her later tonight." A hopeful smile crossed Dumbo's face. Things wouldn't seem so bad if he could just see his mother. Later that night, Timothy took Dumbo to the wagon where his mother was chained. "Mrs. Jumbo, someone to see you," Timothy called. Mrs. Jumbo put her trunk through the bars of the window and stroked Dumbo's head. She wrapped her trunk around Dumbo and rocked him lovingly. At last, it was time to leave. Tearfully, Dumbo and his mother waved goodbye. As Timothy and Dumbo returned to the clown's tent, they heard the clowns talking about their act. "Let's make the house taller tomorrow," shouted a clown. Dumbo felt miserable. He didn't like being laughed at during the clown's act, and a taller house just sounded scary. All Dumbo wanted was to be with his mother. He started to cry. Then his eyes slowly began to droop. Finally, he fell asleep and started to have the strangest dream. herself. Dumbo heard Timothy's words and believed them, and what's more, he believed in himself. At the last second, Dumbo spread his ears and began to soar up and up. The astonished audience went wild as Dumbo chased the clowns around the ring. The crowd roared as he drove to the ringmaster. They applauded thunderously as Dumbo did the loop-the-loops, rolls, and spins in the air. Dumbo was famous. All the newspapers printed pictures of him and Timothy. Most importantly, Mrs. Dumbo was let out of her cage because the ringmaster was so pleased with Dumbo. Dumbo thought it was great